Hey guys, so this week in ethics, we're kind of talking about abuse in the prison systems and kind of like correctional facilities and stuff all together. And within this assignment, we kind of first talk about transgender inmates and how we need to like accommodate like for their medical concerns, or if we even should accommodate for these medical concerns. And this is something I actually do have experience in because of working at the jail. We've had inmates come in who are actually male but are in the process of becoming females, or vice versa. And whether or not we should allow for like these sex reassignment surgeries or like hormone therapies, or even like when it goes as far as like talking about gender specific items, that should they have those, or about where we place them in population, specifically for the counties and kind of local level facilities. It was easier for us because when we had inmates come in like this, we placed them in our booking facility and we put them in a cell by themselves, just for the simple fact of we did not know what to do with them. You can't put a female with a male. Sexually, if an individual has a vagina, you can't put them back there in the male pod, even if they are even if they are considered a male, because of the problems that could have that could have. Or the same thing with an individual who is actually a male, or I'm sorry, is actually a female but appears to be a male. You can't put her back there with other females, because if they have sex and then Priya's involved, and it's an entire huge situation. So which is extremely complicated. So how they do that for prisons, when I was kind of reading the Marshall Project, it made sense, some of the questions and how they go about that. But I think that's a really fine line of how to deal with something like that. I think how far along these individuals are when it goes to like their hormone therapies, or if they've already did sexual reassignment surgeries. I think all of these factors should be in play. I think it should be very situational. I think these individuals should be sat down and talked to about really figuring out where they are mentally and where they are physically, because there are also inmates who will come in and who will, as we call it, they'll be gay while they're in prison, or gay while they're in jail, just because they're in jail, and then they get out and it's a different story. And you don't want those situations. You don't want them to play that card just so they can be with another individual so they can have their sexual desires appeased. Like, you don't want that. So I think it could be really fine. It's a very fine line when you kind of talk about, what type of care we should give to these transgender inmates. I do think that they should have, like, if they've already started hormones, I think they should have the opportunity to continue them. I think they should have these therapy sessions. They should be given opportunities, such as other inmates are in prison, when it comes to like them having certain therapy or medical concerns. If they have diabetes, they're given the opportunity to take care of their diabetes while they're there, or whatever else it is. I mean, if you're already started these type of things, it should be done. One thing I do disagree with is it kind of talked about a case talking about sexual reassignment surgery given to an inmate there. I don't agree with that, because I feel like this individual has murdered people. He has robbed a facility. I think they said he had done arson. I'm not really sure. Once you're incarcerated, if you've not started stuff like this, in my opinion, I don't think that you should have that right is kind of taken away. You're now in a facility where you've lost other rights. Why should we give you the opportunity to do that? But then again, I don't know. It's extremely confusing. I just kind of wanted to touch on that. I didn't mean for this to be as long as it is, but that's my opinion on that. And then as far as our actual assignment goes, we kind of talked about, the first thing was like the mistreatment and abuse and how common it is in correctional facilities. They made a statement in there that it is ignored, which I 100% agree. It is very ignored, especially cases of like sexual abuse and violence within facilities. And that kind of happens because there's a lot of inmates who also make fake accusations for attention. They do it because they know how to play this system. They know that if they say, hey, such and such is doing this, you might want to check in on that. They're only doing that so they can kind of get in good with you, as well as have more authority over other inmates, or playing like the jailhouse boss. It kind of goes into real, I don't honestly even know how to explain it, but these inmates know what they're doing. They know how to do it. They know how to create these type of situations for themselves so they can get what they want. They know how to play the guards and how to play the other inmates. And, unfortunately, because of those situations, if another inmate is sexually abused or violated, or there's a fight that goes on, nobody's going to snitch. Nobody's going to say anything. They're going to keep it to themselves. And if they do, they know that later they're going to get the same amount of attention that individual just got because they became a snitch. So, there's kind of a jailhouse code and a prison code that comes in that's kind of like unstated. This is just something you learn from working in these places. It's something that you learn from being there. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the other article that was listed about prison guards, forcing inmates to fight. They're not forcing inmates to fight most of the time. Now, that does happen. That is true, like those type of gladiator matches. But in my opinion, that's more of an extreme case that probably happens more in prisons. That's nothing that I've had any experience with, being honest. But there are smaller situations that happen within, these jails and these facilities and even prisons, period. There are bets that take place, like smaller actions, like trying to gain authority, verbal comments, stuff that these guards interfere with inmates to try to hold like a type of authority over them, and other inmates do that with other inmates, and they even do it with certain guards too if they feel like they can take advantage of them. These things happen all the time. It's kind of when you're in a facility every single day and you're dealing with this type of negativity and crime and just kind of all of that stuff, you are going to kind of live that lifestyle in a way. And that is a true comment. And I have friends who work now at the jail with me that used to work at the prison, and they've made comments about situations where they've been in the prison and an inmate said something slick, so they ended up fighting with that inmate, but it was off camera, whatever. It's not ethical and it's not okay, but this shit happens. It happens all the time, and if you think it doesn't, you're very rudely mistaken, because it does, and they get away with it, and that's why all of this type of stuff is ignored most of the time. And I think because of situations like that, PREA is kind of a huge thing that was created back in 2003, I believe, for these problems, and PREA has helped tremendously, but PREA is also such a thin line that you can get in trouble with PREA for doing, PREA is violated every single day because of how thin the lines are in that situation. And even then, it still kind of goes unnoticed. It's still problems that are happening because, for example, when you talk about the Prison Litigation Reform Act, there's so many insignificant outcomes and biases that happen for individuals who would try to pursue that. They're unable to get away with, they're unable to seek help and actually get what they need because of what had happened to them. Some of the questions, I know I'm kind of going back and forth, I'm sorry, but some of the questions kind of talk about what findings in the article most surprised you. Personally, none of them surprised me because I know that this stuff happens. We've learned about it. So I would say they really all least surprised me. According to the 2015, what type of abuse by guards were found to be routine, all of that, like the sexual assault, the violence, the mistreatment simply itself, the abuse, the over representation, all of that is very routine. All of it happens, and it even happens without individuals realizing that they are causing it to happen. I'm sure that I've done some of these things, to be completely honest with you. How do assaults in public prisons compare to those in private prisons? I think it very much is the same, because private prisons, we don't hear about it, but we know that this mistreatment's happening. We know that a lot of unconstitutional acts happen within private prisons, and it does in public prisons too, as well as county jails and state facilities. It's definitely happening. It's just not getting reported, and if it is getting reported, it's probably not getting the help that these individuals need. There's no significant outcomes that are coming out from it. So it's just kind of where it's at. And then what hurdles must an inmate seek to have that Prison Litigation Reform Act? They have to fully exhaust all of their administrative remedies that are available to them before they file for this. As well as that, they're getting so much backlash. They're getting threats, they're getting abuse, they're getting everything in the world, because they're in these facilities where these individuals know where cameras are and where cameras are not. They know, individuals know whether or not they snitched. And these guards sometimes have a uniform on, but they play both sides, or they play the other side and they're just wearing the uniform. You don't know that situation unless you're actually in the situation. I think suggestions that could correct it. I think PREA was a start. I think there's a lot of more things we need to do, but it's not an easy thing. And it's really hard when you have these individuals who work these jobs every single day, and they're there and they play the books just like the inmates play the books. It's just one's wearing a uniform and one's wearing a jumpsuit. There's not a difference 95% of the time, in my opinion. But I think PREA was a good start, and I think, fixing like the Prison Litigation Reform Act maybe a little bit more, and just bringing more awareness to these facilities altogether and the abuse that happens, specifically in private prisons and even public prisons, would make a difference. But it's something that we need to start with.